This actually happened to me a few years ago. I was a single mother of two girls at the time. One was 3 years old, and the other one was about 18 months. I didn't have the best job, but I was able to take care of us. We lived close to a low-income neighborhood, like the houses that you can get help with by the state, but it wasn't in that area. It was a trailer park right outside of the area that I lived in. I rented the trailer from a couple, and they promised to take care of the plot rent as long as I agreed to pay for the utilities, which would save me quite a bit, so I agreed. As long as the kids' room stayed comfortable, I could deal with being a little hotter or colder. The area itself wasn't bad though. There was an older lady that lived across the street that always brought me food and supplies and liked to help watch my girls if I ever needed to run errands. I also remember another couple that had two kids as well. I typically saw the mom sitting outside while the kids played in the yard. There were really only two downfalls to the place. The trailer I lived in was very run down. The roof leaked a lot, and every time I told them, they would tell me it was on the list to be fixed. The AC went out, and it took them forever to finally fix it, but they were cheap and always tried to fix things themselves, so I dealt with the husband, Martin, quite a bit. That was the other problem. While the wife, Norma, seemed alright at first, she always seemed inconvenienced by me calling with requests as time went on. The whole process was draining. Even though she didn't know a thing about home repairs, I had to call her so she could tell Martin to do it. Which, while it did save time, I did prefer talking to her because Martin always creeped me out. From the first time I met them, he was very off-putting. As mentioned, they started out fine. They were very flexible with me and even came over and called a few times to make sure everything was working properly and if I had any concerns, questions, or noticed anything that needed to be looked at. They also came around at the beginning with housewarming gifts, like they gave me their old microwave and vacuum because I didn't have either. Norma also gave me suggestions on daycares nearby that she thought were good because their own kids went there. She even made comments about how my kids reminded her of her own grandkids. As time went on, they started losing interest in helping me with stuff though. Like, Norma would get meaner and colder in my calls to her. Martin just made weird comments, or just made me feel uncomfortable when he came around. Like, every time he came over and my kids were there, he would make a similar comment, but would call them his kids, like, "There's my kiddos," or something like that, like them reminding him of his kids, not grandkids. At first, I didn't think much of it, but the fact that he would say it every damn time started getting old. I'm sure my laughs had to give it away though, as they slowly became weaker and faker. Yet every time, he'd still come over making the same comments. Norma kept getting meaner and he kept acting like the caring father, which again, if that's all this was, fine. But then he would start asking about the girls' father. If he was still in the picture, if I was seeing someone, or if someone else was living here with me, things like that. I told him I wasn't with anyone and no one else was there because I thought it was just a trap to try and get me in trouble for having someone there that wasn't on the lease. But it was also the truth. I wasn't with anyone at the time. However, he seemed too happy about hearing this. He made comments that I would find someone eventually and that they would take care of me and my girls so that I would never have to worry about anything again. But the way he said it just made it seem really thought out in a way. It was just weird. So I just joked about it, saying something like I hope so because I felt bad for having to rely on him to do all the handiwork. I was sitting at my kitchen table and he came over and sat next to me and said, "It will happen. You just have to be patient and open-minded." He said someone will come along willing to take care of someone else's kids. Kind of weird and specific statement, I thought at first, But then he would continue to ask me on occasions if I was seeing anyone and who I was interested in, and if I would ever be considered to dating an older guy. It was just so weird because who the hell asks that? So between these comments and the fact that he would call me beautiful, I tried to avoid calling him. I would ask my dad or my brother for help when I could, or try to do it myself with a YouTube tutorial, but there were some things I just couldn't avoid. Anything with the AC I had to call them for because they had a warranty thing on it, so it was covered. There was one time I had an issue with it and he had to come over to fix it. I remember him texting me saying he would be over around 2 p.m., so after I laid the kids down for a nap around noon, I went to take a shower. Not expecting company, I went to shower without grabbing clothes. Since the bathroom is right by my bedroom door, I usually just walk across. For some reason though, I decided to wrap a towel around me instead, and thankfully I did because as I walked out, I saw Martin messing with the thermostat. I know I screamed, "What the hell?" or something to that effect, and went back in the bathroom and yelled why he was there. He calmly stated that he was there to fix the AC, but I told him he was early. He said that he got freed up earlier than expected, so he thought he would just come over. Through all this and me mentioning he could have at least called or texted, he seemed like it was no big deal and didn't apologize once. Then, while he was working on it, I pretty much stayed in the bedroom till he was done. As he finished, he came back to the room to let me know what was going on, and then he said something like, "You know, you don't have to cover your body just because I'm around. You're a beautiful girl and you should be proud of it because you look great for having 2 kids. What do you say to that? To your landlord at that?" He left and I started freaking out and knew that I had to start looking for places to move at this point. Of course, this would blow up in my face because my hours started getting cut at work, so I was already struggling to pay the utilities and rent. And I asked Norma if I could pay like a week later this month. She made sure to nag me about not being able to keep up with my responsibilities, but eventually agreed to let me since it's the first time I've had any issues like this. Then the toilet had to start flooding, and no matter what I did, it wouldn't stop. It wasn't something that my family could help with, so I had to call them. The girls were with my mom for the night, so it was just me. So I stayed in the living room folding clothes, so I wasn't on the same end as him. He was probably back there for about half an hour or so. He called a few places and cussed a few times, but when he came out, he didn't seem angry or upset. I asked him what happened, and he explained that they would have to call an actual plumber to come out and look at the lines because there's a block somewhere. That was when he looked a little disappointed at first, saying if it's blocked due to items like feminine products or something like that, then I would have to pay for it. I barely had enough money to cover rent and bills, so I started freaking out about it. I was stressed as is, and he was still good at comforting people because he reminded me of my dad in the beginning. So he came over and sat on the couch next to me, calmed me down, and started telling me that we could probably work something out. I wish I didn't, but stupid me believed he was being honestly helpful, and he had this disgusting grin on his face. I just sat there trying to figure out what his problem was, when I noticed he went from looking at my face down to my chest. I don't remember what exactly he said, still trying to block it all out, but you can imagine what he requested. I told him to get the hell out, and he just walked out calmly like he did nothing wrong. I had to get out of there. I called my mom crying, telling her what happened, and she told me to come over just in case he tried to come back, since he had a key. My parents let me stay with them till I found a new place. They offered before I got the trailer, but I was trying to be on my own. If I would have known this was going to happen, I would have just taken them up on their offer. Throughout that week, I got all my stuff out of there, as long as someone was over there with me. I sent a long email to Norma telling her I was out because her husband was a creep and left that last month's rent in the trailer with the keys. There was nothing on paper, no lease or anything, so nothing binding me or making me have to stay. She left me a few nasty voicemails because I didn't even want to talk to her, but she finally stopped calling. I never reported it because I didn't have any proof, nor did he do anything to me, so I didn't feel like they could do anything for me anyways. But it's definitely made me more cautious about where I live. So to Norma, and especially Martin, let's never, ever meet again, and never, ever rent from a Norma and Martin in South Carolina. Back in high school, there was this guy that tended to keep to himself. I'll call him Jeff. Jeff was a loner type. He talked to a few of the goths, a few people from the football team, but it was typically in passing or during lunch. I never saw them around each other long term, so not sure how close any of them were. I think it was mutual to a lot of us, though, that there was something off about him. Now, I went to elementary school with Jeff. He was all right then. He seemed like a pretty smart kid, though. He was also an only child. So I think being around other young children and having to share and play fair wore on him. I remembered him getting upset when he was told that he had to share the swing or slide at recess, and when he would get in trouble or be asked to do something, he would occasionally throw a tantrum, throwing things and even break things. It was in an act of, if I can't play with it, no one can. I just steered clear from him as much as I could from then on. I didn't see much of him in middle school, but he reappeared in high school. I know his parents had split up and he lived with his mom, but there were rumors that his dad killed himself when they were split up, or that's why he lives with just his mom. High school was weird. As mentioned, I didn't really interact with him, but I seemed to be one of the few people he recognized from elementary, so he would say hi or good morning to me in passing. We had biology and art class together. He still had his moments where he would be cool at first, and then something would set him off, and he'd get irrationally angry. I remember in biology class, we had to dissect a frog, and we were in a group of 3. Of course, I would get paired with him and another girl. She was the quiet type, typically kept to herself, so she tended to be very to the point when it came to group assignments. We had to do some simple tagging for like heart and lungs, etc. Jeff wrote out the tags and then we all took turns placing them. However, Jeff seemed to really enjoy piercing the organs. He would make sound effects as he pushed them in or make gross jokes about it. Angel, our partner, obviously was uncomfortable with it. Since I knew him some, I'd always tell him things like knock it off or grow up. Towards the end of the class, when we had turned around to listen to the teacher about cleaning up, we were facing away from Jeff. When we turned back around, we were disgusted to find out that Jeff had cut off the frog's legs and was playing with them. Who the hell in their right mind would do that? Angel had had enough. I could tell by the way she screamed at Jeff and walked out of the room. This got the whole class's attention, and the teacher came over to see. Everyone had to clean up, and I was told to go check on Angel while Jeff had to clean his crime scene alone. She was okay, but the bell was just about to ring when we walked back in. Jeff was still sitting at the table that we were at and was told to stay behind afterwards. By the look of Jeff's and the teacher's face, they were both annoyed. Another occurrence was around April 1st. It was a standard day with normal pranks from the students and teachers alike, all lighthearted and not damaging. But during that week, there was this bad smell growing. At first, we thought it was possibly sewage. We saw some maintenance people in the restroom, so we just thought something broke. But when they left and the smell didn't go away for another day or so, We had a feeling it wasn't that. The stench grew worse, and people started making rumors about it smelling like something died. They had to check all the biology and anatomy classes to make sure there wasn't something that wasn't stored properly. Class was actually called off one Friday so they could investigate it further. We found out when we came back because we were all basically told in each class, so we had to hear about it at least 8 times. Somehow, there were several dead rabbits found in the intake vents throughout the school, so they had to remove them, use cameras to make sure they got everything, clean and air it out to finally get the smell out. So in each class, we were asked if we knew anything about it and to tell any of the staff if we did. At first, we were all confused and disgusted. But of course, I had biology for my second hour, and Jeff thought it was hysterical. He made little smirks and comments about it. My guess was he had to have done it, or at least had a part in it. Not to mention, the vents they were put in were in the boys' restroom, not even the girls'. I'm pretty sure he ended up being punished for it. I don't know if he admitted to it or if they had proof somehow, but he was out of school for a bit shortly after that. One of the last horrifying memories I have of him was in art class. One thing he had going for him was that he was a fantastic artist. With just about every medium, he nailed it. He was good with acrylics, charcoal, and even things like paper mache. However, a lot of his work was dark or displayed nudity. He was detailed with it though, like it was actually artistic, not just lewd, which is why I think he got away with it. He was told not to make it so obvious, but otherwise, unless there was a specific topic or theme, the teacher let him make whatever he wanted. There was one project where we had to take an old book and do what we wanted to make it our own art. Some people glued or bound the pages together and carved it into something else. Many made theirs into their own art book, almost like a personal portfolio. Jeff made his into a very graphic flip book in a way. I remember looking at it when they were on display in the classroom. Some of them were displayed in the art window, but the ones that aren't as good, or in Jeff's case, a bit inappropriate, they were displayed in their room. At least the teacher was respectful to others' work, and I can appreciate that. Anyways, doing this from memory here, his book started with painted black pages. It seemed to zoom out of a child's eye to the front profile of the child holding a gun and crying. It then showed the gun firing, but it wasn't a bullet. It exploded into a bunch of psychedelic-looking stuff. The next page were filled with a lot of color, optical illusions, little cartoon characters, and a smiling naked woman surrounded by flowers. That somehow changed over to a man with his stomach bloodied and then zoomed into the man's eye and was blank for the rest of the book. It was crazy detailed, but also disturbing. I always wondered if it had something to do with his mom and dad, but I would never know. That wasn't the horrifying part. I just wanted to share the book because it was crazy. One of the other projects we would have was for our final. We had to create something that combined at least 4 mediums or styles that we learned. We had about 2 to 3 weeks to do it. The first few days, while everyone worked, Jeff just sat there with blank paper and pencils. Usually he was quick to work in art, so to see him sitting there empty with nothing even scribbled was odd. On the last week we had left, he was still sitting there, but this time he had glue, scissors, and a canvas. The teacher asked him if he needed any help or inspiration, and he didn't take his eyes off the table and just said no. I sat across from him, so I looked over occasionally and saw he had grabbed the scissors. I started getting a bad feeling about this. I got up to pretend to go get paint, since it was close to the door, and stopped to talk to someone else that was standing nearby. That's when someone screamed and we all looked over. Jeff had the scissors up to his head, cutting his ear off. There was blood everywhere, and he just kept going. Several people left the classroom. I just stood there in fear, not knowing what to do. The teacher started shouting at him to stop and drop the scissors, but he kept going. We had a security guard at the school that rushed in and basically had to fight to get the scissors away from him. Once it was all said and done, they had an ambulance come and get him, and the janitors had to go in and clean the room. However, as he was escorted out, he kept laughing and shouting he was Van Gogh. That was going to be his whole art project, his ear. He was obviously gone for the remainder of the year, and I haven't seen him since. I don't know what happened to him, but I hope he got help. He seemed smart and very artistic, but he definitely needed help. I've been a hotel manager for quite a while, and I have seen my fair share of the absolutely insane. I could go on for days with the amount of crazy people we've had come through the doors and stay the night, and we're not even in a shady part of town or anything. In fact, we're not even that cheap. People pay good money to do whatever it is crazy people do in their hotel rooms. I'm not going to guess, and I'm not going to judge. Like I said, I have plenty of stories I could go on about. The first one of note, there was a group of swingers that decided that our hotel was a great place for them to get together. Again, I'm not going to judge. You do whatever it is you do behind closed doors. That's fine. The problem started happening when the group started getting larger and the noise complaints started happening. We had a number of people calling down to the front desk saying that they thought the person in the next room over was being hurt, choked, murdered, etc. We had to pretty much just assure them that we would look into it and call up to the room to make sure everything was okay. When they didn't answer the phone, we would have to go up there, and that was a mess. Literally. One time I had to go do the knocking, and one guy answered the door completely buck naked. Literally zero shame. It was a bit weird trying to explain to this naked man standing in the doorframe that they were being too loud and that they needed to dial the volume back just a little bit. All the while a group of 5 to 6 other people were in the room and going at it. What's worse, that wasn't the last time, nor the biggest group. One of their visits actually ended with a complaint called down to the desk because someone had seen 4 naked people walking from the ice machine to the room. When the person went up to investigate, they said that there were legitimately a dozen people in that room. Again, no judgments, but come on. Why get 12 people together in a single king-size bedroom and do that? Apparently, the employee knocked and informed them that there were guest limits to the room, which I don't think is actually a thing, and then they couldn't have that many people in there. This, of course, upset them, and they ended up leaving a bunch of negative Yelp reviews for our hotel. When they left the next morning, the cleaning crew said they left a number of adult toys, content, and condoms all over the room, and that they had pretty much trashed it. It was seriously gross. I hired a hazmat level cleaning crew to clean the carpets and tile, and I don't think we put anyone in that room for a while. That said, we did charge the main person's cards somewhere close to $300 for incidentals, and when he called to complain, we told him that he could email him photos of how he left the room. He didn't fight it after that. Another story that stuck with me, albeit for a much sadder reason, was this one guy that had paid for the room for a week. He had done what most people do. He dropped the do not disturb sign on the door as soon as he got there. After 3 days of the sign being on the door, if no one has seen the guests leave the room, come down for a meal, or anything like that, we will give the room a welfare check in the form of a call. If no one answers the call, we actually do a quick knock on the door to make sure the person is all right. Unfortunately, you can probably see where this is going. He was definitely not all right. When we called the room, there wasn't an answer. The night desk person sent one of the cleaning crew to knock and then do a room check if the person didn't answer. When they did, they found the guy sitting in the chair in the corner of the room, completely lifeless. On the floor around him was a number of pill bottles and a huge handle of liquor. He actually left a note too with contact information for his daughter that apparently lived in the city and why he did it. Apparently, he had recently found out that he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he wanted to visit his daughter to tell her about it and talk about the situation. In the note, he mentioned that as much as he wanted to tell her, he couldn't bear to see the look on her face or see her cry, so he decided to end his life then and there. He was very apologetic to the hotel staff in the note, but honestly, that whole thing made me sad as hell. That was probably the one time where I was close to quitting because that was too much. The last event that I can think of off the top of my head, a family had apparently watched too much of that one show, Intervention, in the early 2010s, and had decided that they would use one of our rooms to set up an intervention of their own for someone. They, unfortunately, played the whole thing wrong and had made the person that contacted the other person to set it up like it was going to be a drug deal. Basically, the person that was supposed to lure the drug-addicted person had told said drug-addicted person that it was going to be a sale and to meet him at the hotel. The drug-addicted person then came to the hotel, walked with them to the room, and when their family was there, they freaked out, thinking that they were about to be arrested, and that this was a sting operation. What does said addict do when they think their family has turned on them? They pull a gun from their waistband and threaten to kill everyone within a 10-feet radius, including guests in the hallway and guests that opened their door to see what all the screaming was about. Thankfully, those guests did call down to the front desk and we got the police involved. But there's nothing to round out an afternoon shift at a hotel like a hostage situation. I am grateful that no one was hurt, and the person did go with the police with very little in ways of resistance, but that situation really could have ended up bad. Like, really bad. The lesson here? If you're going to stage an intervention, first off, don't tell the person it's a drug deal, as they will be less likely to come armed. Second off, don't do it at a random hotel because it's easier. When the show did it, there was a major public presence and the people were already being followed by a camera crew. They expect the event to be broadcast, so they're not likely to do something stupid. Plus, we at the hotel really don't have hostage negotiation skills, so the police will be involved by the end of it. So that, my friends, was another scary story collection. I have creepy kids in high school. Glad I'm done with that. Creepy landlords. Glad I go through a business and not individual people. And just weird people in hotel rooms. That's always fun. I think the weirdest thing I remember happening at a hotel was pulling back the curtains and finding somebody's underwear. That was interesting. But they gave us like a dinner credit, so that was nice. But that's about as crazy as it got for us. How about you guys? Have you had any weird experiences for hotels? We should look into some hotel stories. Maybe we'll do that soon. In the meantime, if you did like what you heard today, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. And lastly, don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts on the video. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic week. And until next time, take care.